We can't hear you, RJ.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
You're muted.
What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's BlockingTheBoys.com.
Look, Dalton's not here, and RJ just had to take
My
over.
bad. I did it again. Appreciate everybody
It's like
for
Dalton's
understanding.
role.
Yeah. Okay, let's try the intro again. What's going on, everybody? I'm RJ Ochoa from SB Nation's BloggingTheBoys.com. I don't know how the mute function works, apparently, here on our hosting platform. It is another live streamed edition of Talkin' the Draft to wrap up the 2021 NFL Draft when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. We are joined, of course, by Connor Livesay and Cole Patterson. Dalton Miller is not here. He's on vacation. I think Aruba. Am I making that up? I really actually think he's in Aruba.
He's in Aruba.
So if anybody wants to head on down there and give him a big hug, do so in a socially distanced setting. We're going to completely recap and grade the Dallas Cowboys draft class. But before we do, a little bit of breaking news just before we started streaming here. For those of you that are here with us live, Jeff Heath, the former Dallas Cowboys safety turned Las Vegas Raiders safety, is going to be on the open market on Wednesday. NFL Network's Tom Pelissero reported that the Raiders are going to release him. So Connor, I'll start with you. Should the Dallas Cowboys be interested in Jeff Heath and a potential reunion?
I feel like we kind of pushed this into motion because the other day when we were talking about the UDFA class, we were talking about have the Cowboys upgraded Jeff Heath since his departure, and I don't think so. I don't know if he's a guy they'd want to bring back either. Just, he's kind of a Jason Garrett coaching staff, Rod Marinelli guy. So it'd be interesting to see if he's a guy that Mike McCarthy, Dan Quinn are interested in, but they still really don't have a true free safety outside of DeMonte Kazee. So they have one guy who plays the position, and he's coming off a torn Achilles and not making a ton of money. So, as much as we wanted them to add a Richie Grant or Trayvon Moehrig in the draft, they didn't. So it looks like they maybe could look for a trade partner, look for a free agent to come in, whether that be a guy like Jeff Heath or, a lot of people are talking about Earl Thomas again too. So we'll see what happens. Doesn't seem likely, but it's probably a call they should make to see what it would cost them to bring him back.
Cole, should the Cowboys bring back the GOAT, as many people know him to be, or as some people know him, the GOAT against the Los Angeles Rams, let Jared Goff pick up a much-needed first down in the 2018 divisional round? There's logic behind it, but, Connor mentioned Jason Garrett and Rod Marinelli. Neither of them are with the Cowboys anymore. So are you in or are you out on a Jeff Heath reuniting?
I mean, there should definitely at least be some level of interest from the Cowboys. Like Connor mentioned, they didn't really address the safety position very much this offseason. They signed a guy, that had a torn Achilles. Keanu Neal's going to play linebacker. So you don't really know what you're going to have at that position. They didn't really draft anybody until, the sixth round to even play safety. Even he played corner at the collegiate level. So, there should at least be some kind of interest there. I don't know if they would actually bring him back. I'm like somebody else said, it's not like he has familiarity with this exact scheme. He played a little bit under Chris Richard, some similarities there, but there should at least be some kind of interest. I feel like, they need safety help, and he's probably the best safety in the market right now, off the top of my head, unless I'm missing something. They're not going to sign Earl Thomas. That I feel like that ship sailed. So yeah, I feel like they could do a lot worse, especially because KZ has a torn Achilles.
My only argument for it is the Cowboys leadership group is in sore need of revitalization. They've lost. I think it's underestimated or it's undersold how many leaders they've lost over the course of the last few years. Obviously, Jason Witten twice, Travis Frederick retired, Byron Jones leaving. Jeff Heath was a leader, a member of the Cowboys Leadership Council himself. Des Bryant, a member of that leadership council. You can make Sean Lee now. You could certainly make an argument. Tyrone Crawford. You can go on and on, guys that have kind of been the leaders of the Cowboys. And so I think that it's worth at least talking about, which is why we did, but it's really only worth maybe 5 minutes, which are now up. And I wasted enough time with myself on mute. So let's go ahead and get into the 2021 Dallas Cowboys draft class. We're going to grade each and every pick. But Connor, before we do, I want you to tell me how you feel a couple of days after the draft. Now you've had some kind of time to sit and marinate on the players the Cowboys took.
It's okay. I think that's the best way. I think it's a B minus. I know we're gonna get into this, but I think it's an okay draft. It's not the home run grand slam that they hit last year, as I described in one of our previous shows. I feel like they just went up to the plate. They hit a single. They might have had a strikeout in between there, and they come up and they hit a 3-run home run with Jabril Cox. So that's kind of like the way I view it. Is they hit a few singles. They hit the easy base hit. They took some walks. They had some strikeouts, but then they came up in a few situations and did hit some big home runs. So I think that's kind of the way to look at it.
Cole, your thoughts? Not quite a week, but I guess almost a week out of the Cowboys draft class.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you want us to give our grades yet or not, but my grades.
No, don't spoil it, Cole. Yet, not yet. Be cool.
Don't spoil it. Okay. But yeah, my thoughts are pretty similar to Connor's. I feel like I was pretty, I wouldn't say upset, but I was kind of, everybody was expecting to come away with a corner in the first round and to come away with a linebacker. I mean, Parsons is really good, but it's not what we were expecting. I mean, you could argue the value probably wasn't the best in the top 15. So that kind of wasn't the best in the first round. Then you draft a couple guys on day 2 that not everybody's familiar with. You do come away with Jabril Cox in the third day, which is a pretty big steal. Yeah, I mean, Connor kind of explained it perfectly, hitting a couple singles and hitting a big home run. It wasn't anything sexy like last year's draft when you came away CeeDee Lamb, Trevon Diggs, Neville Gallimore, the first 3 picks. I mean, that was pretty impressive trio right there. There's nothing like that this year, but it was solid. I mean, you got 2 you hope to be starters from day 1. And in Parsons and Joseph, Jabril Cox could play significant snaps as a rookie as well. You got some guys on the defensive line that can contribute right away. There wasn't any like big time headline or anything like that, but I don't think it was the end of the world by any means either.
You guys are simpatico. You're wearing the same shirt for those that aren't, watching. It was totally planned. We had a group text going on, Cole and Connor. They said, I'm going to wear the Blog and the Boys shirt. So nobody believed that it was just a coincidence. Let's start with the grades. Micah Parsons, again, almost a week out. Cole, we'll start with you, even though you said it wasn't exactly what, a lot of people envisioned. I think we all did kind of latch on to an idea, and that might be why people were not disappointed, but it just wasn't what people expected. After hearing the Cowboys talk about it a couple of times, after hearing Micah himself and his press conference after he got drafted, how do you feel about this pick specifically?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned it. We were, set on a corner, but even after they traded back, Rashawn Slater was still sitting there on the board. I thought for sure that's what they were going to do, address the offensive line. He was sitting right there for the taking. But they went with Parsons. I was kind of, I would say, a little bit upset on the first night. I'm coming around a little bit on it. I'm sure there's some probably bias in my thinking right now that he is part of the Dallas Cowboys. I won't lie. But, I mean, he was a dominant player on the collegiate level. He was a first-team All-American as a sophomore. You don't really see that very often, especially from the linebacker position. He's a guy that can really create havoc in the backfield. He's impressive rushing the passer. He's good against the run. He doesn't have a ton of experience in coverage, but he's shown some flashes there as well. It just wasn't somebody who I was expecting for them to pick with Slater on the board and all of that going on. But he isn't a bad pick either. I think when people see that some people are kind of disappointed, it's not because he's a bad player or anything like that. It's just that they probably could have gotten a little bit better value. But I don't hate it either. I think he can step right in. They didn't pick up Leighton Vander Esch's fifth-year option. They have a way out of Jalen Smith's contract next year as well. So it seemed like they're kind of planning to revamp that linebacker unit, and he's a guy that can headline that position and be a very good pro for years to come.
Give us a grade.
Just because the fact Slater is there, I'll probably give it a B. Not a bad pick by any means, but Slater was probably the better player at a better, more valuable position in the top 15. So I'll probably go B plus.
Okay. Connor, I'm excited to get your opinion on this. We have a lot of loyal readers at bloggingtheboys.com, as you both well know. And we were reminded today, Connor, of an article. I don't know if you remember this or not, but it was titled "The One Linebacker Who Can Make It Interesting for the Cowboys with a High Draft Pick." Cole, this article was written on November 18th, 2020, so a very long time ago. Connor, I want to read you the last paragraph, really. It says, "The Cowboys defense offense needs the same folks that the Cowboys offense has seen over the last few years. With Vander Esch being the only first-round pick currently on the Cowboys defense, it's time to infuse the defense with talent, and Parsons would be a great start, though we all wish there was an elite edge or corner in this class. Parsons' elite athletic traits bring a speed dynamic to this defense that it's lacked for some time. Pairing his athletic traits with his ability to rush the passer, cover the entire field, and impact the game in multiple ways make him a very intriguing option for the Cowboys at the top of the 2021 NFL Draft. This article, Connor, was written by you. How do you feel? Like, I mean, does this kind of like, you know, reignite some old thoughts and some old spirits that you had within you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I remember early on in the process before we knew, you know, exactly who was coming out in this class, who was going to be in the draft. Like, Parsons was the number one defender that was talked about because he opted out. Like, he had a really good 2019 year. His freakish athleticism was obviously evident. We didn't know, you know, if your Patrick Surtains or J.C. Horns were going to come out in this draft class. So at the time, you're kind of looking at him as the big name to look at. And at the time I wrote that article, you know, the Cowboys were eyeing a top 5, top 6 pick, and we weren't sure, you know, we weren't sure about Kyle Pitts yet. We weren't sure about, you know, some of these other guys who were coming out. So Micah Parsons was kind of the guy that I think a lot of teams were looking at. It was like, could this be the top 5 pick for defense? And obviously, you know, you start to hear the rumblings of some of the off the field stuff. You know, he doesn't play in 2020, out of sight, out of mind kind of a deal. You kind of, you know, you drop him a little bit. You don't see him playing. You don't see him making the impact that guys like Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn, you know, those guys are making in 2020. So he's out of sight, out of mind a little bit, but still, like, he's easily, you know, a top 3-4 defender in this class. While I had him a little bit lower than some guys just because of some of the off the field concerns and just his inexperience and like lack of consistency in the coverage aspect of his game, he ended up falling a little bit for me. But again, you can't deny the talent, you can't deny the upside, you can't deny the athleticism, and those are 3 super important things, especially when you're picking, you know, inside the top 10. So, you know, I think it was a really good draft pick. You know, like Cole said, I probably would have went with Slater. You're looking at a situation where J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain were sniped right in front of you. I mean, it's you had to have known that situation was likely going to happen. We talked about it on our live mock draft a few days before the draft when both of the corners went. A lot of people were like, there's no way that's going to happen. We sat there and told people, like, there's a really good chance that could happen. As much as we don't want it to, and like we hope it doesn't. We talked about that in that live mock draft situation that we did, that both of the corners could go off the board, whether it's Carolina and Denver, whether it's a trade up, you know, from Philly. There was a chance that was going to happen, and it ended up happening, and it was just nice for them to be able to move back, still draft a good player, and pick up a top 100 pick in the process.
I think that you both did a great job, and it sounds, Connor, like it's a B for you as well. Because
I'd say B plus.
Right. It's more of a you can't deny pick as opposed to you can make the argument for. You know what I mean? It's a different sort of thing. The Cowboys got where they wanted to go, but instead of taking 1 right, they took 3 lefts, you know, type thing. You know, it's just
right.
And a lot of that wasn't their fault, you know, the fact that they did get sniped, unfortunately. Right. But so consensus is a B plus, which again, he looks like, you know, he's going to be certainly the best linebacker on the Cowboys right now, especially, you know, for the future with the team not picking up the 5th-year option for Leighton Vander Esch, as you mentioned, Cole. So I think something that should be mentioned is the Cowboys are finally acknowledging sunk costs, which is something that they are historically very not good at. They love to just kind of, you know, live with their own mistakes and not really acknowledge them. And so, you know, good for them in that respect. But everybody obviously wanted a corner. The Cowboys did come away with a corner in Kelvin Joseph in the 2nd round, a very athletic prospect. Connor, as you well know, obviously has some off the field character concerns. But yeah, I mean, how do you feel about this as a potential, you know, not makeup for missing out on Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn, but as an added bonus to landing Micah Parsons?
He is the definition of like your blue, like fits right in with the Cowboys 2nd round pick. Like Randy Gregory's a 1st round pick if he doesn't have, you know, off the field issues. You go, but Jalen Smith, probably a first-round pick if he doesn't have the injury issues. You know, you just keep going down the list of guys they've drafted in the second round who have something going on with them that forces them to not get drafted higher. And I think Kelvin Joseph is that same way. He was suspended from LSU. Suspended from the bowl game, transferred to Kentucky. His coaches at Kentucky didn't love his time there. They kind of pushed him to opt out in 2020, halfway through the year. So just a guy who has, you know, a lot of, I don't even want to call them off the field concerns. There's just a lot of questions regarding his like buy-in mentality. Like, is he going to be all in? Is he going to be a guy who shows up for work? He's the first one in the building, last one out. Is he going to play 100% of the time, no matter if this defense is getting shelled like we've seen them do the last few years? There's a few snaps on tape this year where you look at him and you just go, he is not interested in playing football this year, whether it's because of COVID and it's just a weird year and, you know, just not totally all into the game. Like, it could be that. But when you see a guy who kind of just doesn't totally like buy into the coaching staff, the scheme, the competitive reps, like, it's something to me when a guy, like, when they're playing weaker receivers, it's like he's not as interested. But when he goes up against Alabama, he's like, I'm ready to show him the, you know, best player in the country. Like, you need that mentality and attitude 100% of the time. And he played the Alabama receivers better than anyone in the country. So if you can get him to buy in and like give that competitive, you know, force 100% of the time he's on the field, I think he has the ability to play just as good as your Patrick Surtains and J.C. Horns, Greg Newsome's of the world. It's just get him to buy in, get him to stay clean, show up, you know, and do his job. And I think he can be a really good corner. He's got the talent. He's got the ability. He's got the athleticism. He's just got to work on some of his processing, keeping his eyes more disciplined when he's in coverage, and just being a little bit more physical against the run too. But really good quality cover guy who can play man, can play zone, and he's obviously a really good athlete.
I think, you know, it's a fair concern, right? You know, is he all in all the time? What I would say to that, if I was the supreme Kool-Aid drinker, which I'm not trying to be right now, but we have those same questions about Amari Cooper, right? I mean, like, that isn't that a fair like data point? Like, you know, like on the road, he's a different guy. You know, like is he, you know, is he all the way in on this? Like, he has the talent, he has the skill set, he has, you know, all of the polish and everything. But so, I mean, they've obviously gotten a lot out of Amari Cooper. I'm not saying that this is that, but you know, and I know you're not saying like, oh, like hit the panic button, red flag, run away, whatever. But you know, like guys like that, and again, not that, you know, his off the field issues are equivalent to whatever Amari Cooper's dealt with. But I'm just saying, like, that has happened before. Cole, honestly though, how can you doubt somebody who goes by Boss Man Fat? Like, that's the true question here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that right there means he's going to be an awesome pick, right? I mean, if you release, what is it, like 6 rap albums, something like that, and he's not bad. I checked out some of his music today, actually. But yeah,
do you know the lyrics yet? Have you memorized?
I haven't memorized. It was kind of background noise.
I got you.
You do.
Yeah,
let's hear it.
No, you do not want me to do that. I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, Connor hit the nail on the head with the second round picks. They always seem to take a chance on those second round picks, whether it be injury, whether it be character, whether it be off the field, or whatever the case is. And Kelvin Joseph's another one of those guys who could have been a first round pick. He's just as talented as the top guys. He's kind of in that same stratosphere. As Connor mentioned, he played Devontae Smith as well as anybody in the country, if not better than anybody in the country. He didn't give up a catch. He had an interception. And he really did that against all the big-time receivers he played against, I guess, aside from Kyle Pitts. He had a couple interceptions in that Tennessee game. They also had a third-round pick in Josh Palmer. Ole Miss and Elijah Moore, he played pretty well there as well. But yeah, he's a guy with a good pedigree. He was a top 100 recruit coming into high school. He played at LSU. Some things didn't work out there. But, I mean, he was a big-time player at Kentucky, and Stoops over in Kentucky produces good defensive backs, it seems like almost every year, dating back to when he was a defensive coordinator at Florida State, and he seems to be the guy that's next in line. I mean, he has a talent to step right in and be at that corner that the Cowboys are looking for. Obviously, we're hoping for Horn or Surtain, maybe even Newsome and a trade back, or Farley before injuries. But Joseph's a guy that would have garnered more first-round hype if there weren't so many questions, I guess, how bought in he is into playing football. But just pure talent-wise, he's a guy that can step right in. And if everything clicks, the Cowboys got 2 guys that can come in and really revamp this defense and get it back to where it needs to be in order to be competitive in the NFC.
Yeah, I feel like overall, the draft was like we all went to our favorite restaurant together, right? Like the 3 of us. Dalton wasn't there because he's in Aruba. So we go and like the whole ride, Connor's like, I cannot wait to order the steak. Like, this is my favorite restaurant. It's my favorite meal. I'm so pumped. I'm going to get it. Connor's a medium guy, right?
Of course. That's the only way to eat your steak.
Okay, respect. They're just making sure, so we're on the way, Cole. We're on the way. We get there. Connor says, I don't even need the menu. I know what I want. And he says, I'm ready. I want the steak, the 24 ounce. Connor's shooting for the moon tonight. And they're like, sir, I'm so sorry. We're sold out. And Connor is just devastated because he spent the whole day looking forward to this meal. And they said, but check it out. We've got the swordfish. And Connor's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting swordfish. My palate wasn't prepped for this. And so Connor says, all right, I'll take the swordfish. And they say, you know what, though? Because you were so, set on the steak, we're going to throw in some like truffle mac and cheese on the house. Don't worry about it. That's what Kelvin Joseph is to me. Like, it worked. It's still a delicious meal. It's just not what you were expecting. And some of it kind of was the board dictating where they went.
Literally, we're eating swordfish for dinner tonight at my house. No, I'm not kidding. I literally,
that's hilarious.
Swordfish is for dinner tonight. So, yeah, that's technically exactly what happened.
Okay, so give me a grade for the Kelvin Joseph pick. You both kind of hovered around BB plus for Micah Parsons. Cole, you first.
I'll go A- with that kind of talent in the top 50, second round.
Connor.
I go B+ again. Like I said, if the off the field wasn't there, I think it's A for sure. It's just you have to. I know people want to ignore that. I know I saw some of the comments, like people are like, you can't worry about that. And like that is exactly what you worry about in those guys who have the talent, but just can't get it figured out. I mean, it's just it is. You go up and down the league of these guys who half of them work out, half of them don't. You just cross your fingers and pray that he's the one that just totally buys in and shows up and is ready to work.
Iceberg Slim simply just says boss man fat. So everybody's aware. We do appreciate our live audience. If you have grades that differ from these people, by these people I mean Cole and Connor, we certainly want to hear them. Kevin, we put up a moment ago, is at a B-. Thomas Smith also at a B-. So Cole, you might be drinking the Kool-Aid when it comes to this particular pick.
On the field, he's an A. It's just can we get that out of him game in, game out?
No, that's fair.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a nice way to end the second round. The Cowboys had 3 picks in the third round. I think we all agree this was where things went a little bit off the rocks or off the rails, maybe into the rocks. They did kind of steer the ship back on Saturday, but the first pick, Osa Odighizuwa, Daniel Jeremiah, I haven't listened to this, but I saw a tweet about it. Apparently said on the latest episode of Move the Sticks that he wouldn't be shocked if Osa wound up being the best Cowboys player from this draft class. While these guys assess, we do want to hear your grades if you're watching live with us. Connor, your thoughts on the newest defensive tackle for the Dallas Cowboys?
I like Odighizuwa a lot. Obviously, his brother, he has the bloodlines. His brother came out a few years ago. I think he got drafted by the Giants, defensive end. My only issues with Odighizuwa, which I know people didn't agree with me, but what I saw watching him on tape is he plays the run well. He just plays it light-footed, if that makes sense. Like, he doesn't really get moved. He doesn't lose ground. It's just you'll see guys play, and he's 282 pounds, and he played a ton of nose tackle for UCLA. So he was playing head up over the center, taking on double teams and stuff like that. That's just not who he is. He's not a guy who's going to survive in that role, and it showed up on tape. So I think a lot of people's like how strong he is strong at the point of attack. Like he's that short, stocky, stouty frame. He's got super long arms, so he plays with good leverage. He's a super good leverage player. He just plays that nose tackle position at UCLA light-footed. Like you see him, he doesn't get pushed back, but he gets pushed side to side a lot. Like his shoulders will get turned a lot. He'll get turned some when his arms aren't able to lock out and play with good extension. And that's my biggest issue is at 282 pounds. He's going to play the 3 technique. Is he going to be able to not get turned, not get moved out of the gap? And it's not that he's losing ground. It's just all it takes in the NFL is for you to get turned 12 inches. If you go from being square to getting this way, a running back's taking it 25 yards. So like that's my biggest issue. Like as stout as he is with his hands and violent as he is with his hands and as strong as his base is, he's just got to work on playing with that consistent leverage more often and then not getting, I call it light-footed, because you anchor in, you hold in well, but your feet just get stuck underneath you a little bit, or they'll get to start bouncing a little bit, and then your shoulders get turned, your pads get turned. And there were some runs that just get through his gap because his shoulders aren't able to stay square to line of scrimmage because of his feet getting moved around a little bit at the point of attack. But I think as a 3 technique, he's explosive, he's athletic, he's long, he's raw as a pass rusher, but I think that's where you'll see him make a big impact, is he's kind of that backfield distributor. Like he's going to get in the backfield, he's going to have tackles for loss. I just don't know if he's a guy that's going to sit there, just eat up blocks, hold the point of attack, and allow these guys to really, play free in the secondary with the linebackers. But good player. This was just a small reach for me just because I liked a few guys more, but another B-ish grade for me. I really thought, I really wanted that Aleem McNeil. It's more about the player for me than this. It's more about they already have Neville Gallimore. They already have Tristan Hill playing his position. And while I think Osa has a higher ceiling than those guys, they're all kind of similar players.
Yeah. First of all, I think, Dan Quinn has a type, and it's UCLA defensive lineman. Hopefully this one works out better than the last one that he invested a top 100 pick on in Tech McKinley in Atlanta. But Cole, I want to present John's point to you on our Facebook stream. He says, not the defensive tackle I would have taken. Connor, you did mention Aleem McNeil, but I trust the Cowboys scouting department and Will McClay to pick the right players for the right team. There is this large inherent trust in Will McClay, and I'm not at all trying to poo-poo that. But they have, and we used to talk about forever how they would not draft defensive tackles. I mean, 2019, Tristan Hill, 2nd round last year, Neville Gallimore, 3rd round, and that was after signing Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe. This year, they signed Brent Urban, you could put in that category, and now devoting another 3rd round pick to Osa Odighizuwa. Do you feel like the mentality to the position is changing? Still no 1st round, devotions here, but the Cowboys might be slowly creeping to finally the territory of potentially maybe wanting to find someone like a Fletcher Cox within their own division.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely see the tides turning in that, just because of the fact they keep, picking guys from top 100 first 3 rounds. Again, they haven't picked anybody in the 1st round because 2019, they didn't have a 1st round pick. It was Amari Cooper. 2020, CeeDee Lamb was way too good to pass up on. And this year, there wasn't really that bona fide 1st round pick defensive tackle to take in the top 10, top 15. So you can't really fault him there. But yeah, I kind of agree with Connor. It's kind of more of the player in the sense that I think they could have gotten better value. They could have gotten McNeil. They could have gotten a couple of different players at that position. They were probably better on film than Osa. But I mean, he's a talented player. I think the biggest question about him, Connor kind of alluded to it with him being not pushed around, but kind of, moved, is his size. I mean, he's a little bit undersized at 280, 282 for that position. But he is he's a former state championship wrestler in high school. He's a guy that produced a lot in the Pac-12. He does have some upside with him. It's just how many snaps is he going to see on the field with Tristan Hill, with Neville Gallimore. They obviously spent premium picks on those two as well. It's a little bit crowded. I think a lot of Cowboys fans, I think me, Connor, and Dalton especially, all wanted them to maybe take a 1-tech or a guy that could play a little bit of 1-tech early, and that just didn't happen for whatever reason. Something else is a bad player. It's just that, for one, I think they probably could have gotten him a little bit later, maybe later in the 3rd round with the other 2 picks, maybe even a 4th round if things fell a certain way. So it's kind of strange when they took him with their 1st, 3rd round pick. It seemed like a little bit of a reach, not a bad pick, but a little bit of a reach for sure. So I'd say he's in that B range as well. I don't want to be boring or anything, but you can't really kill him. He's not a bad player. Mm-hmm. It's not an A either, because they're better D tackles on the board, and they probably could have gotten a little bit later with their other 2 3rd round picks or their 1st, 4th round pick. So I'll give it a B.
Connor, comment on our YouTube stream. Make sure and go subscribe to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. Those of you who haven't yet, said, I thought this from I Bleed Blue 365, by the way. I thought they said players over scheme, and almost all of this draft was for scheme. Do you agree that the Cowboys were very focused on, I don't care if this is a square peg or a round peg or a square hole or round hole. I'm only focused on square pegs and square holes, and that's what I'm going to look for.
The first 2 picks, no, because I think I don't think so. I think maybe this round and late, as we talk about some of these later picks, maybe a little bit, especially the final one in this third round that we're going to get to in a second. But I don't know. And the interesting thing is like we heard Dan Quinn talk after the draft, and like they talked about how their base could be a 3-4, and like that's kind of where Osa fits to me. Like he played nose tackle at UCLA. He played some 5 technique at UCLA. Like I thought his best spot could be that 5 technique, like defensive end in a 3-4 scheme. But yeah, a lot of those guys can play three techniques just fine. So that's where he'll probably end up. He could play some of that base. And then the next guy we're going to talk about, I think, fits that as well. I think he's a 5 technique. So I can understand the comment. I don't think it was like the whole draft, but I think they got in these mid rounds and were like, oh, let's pick some guys that are going to fit really well in what we want to do in our base defense, or fit really well what we want to do in our red zone defense, or something like that. Matchup players.
Right.
So, well, I don't want to do that. I want to go into the draft and go, who's the best player available? Have we picked his position yet? No? Okay, let's take, whoever. Let's take Elijah Moulton. Yeah, he's like, that's the way I would run the draft room, and they do it different than I would. But that's okay. Like, as long as they're sticking to a process and that process is working, it's just when that process doesn't seem to be working and you're picking your Tristan Hills, you're picking your Taco Charltons, you're picking your Nahshon Wrights, which we haven't seen the kid play yet, but like we feel like that's a big reach based on what a coach and or scout wanted to fit a player in, squid the square peg into a round hole. Like that's when you're like, you need to change your process.
Right. You hinted at Chauncey Golston. A lot of our viewers believe, Cole, that either he or Osa kind of filled the role left by Tyrone Crawford. And I think you could look at this as like roles because that was the Tyrone Crawford way for the Cowboys, like do whatever it takes. I don't want to say that they've both been drafted to fulfill Tyrone Crawford's void, but the only defensive end they drafted, and this was the pick they got from the Philadelphia Eagles to move back from 10 to 12. Derek says, I really like Golston. I think this is a B grade. His scheme versatility, another great rotational guy, quality defenders that will be around for a couple of years for not a lot of money. That's an important point. Obviously, the low financial commitments here. But my issue with this was that this maybe potentially impedes Bradley and Nye, which is somebody that is still fighting for snaps. But your thoughts on Chauncey Golston?
Yeah, I think it was Jeff Kavanaugh who said that it's almost like the Cowboys went for home runs in the first 2 picks. Their next 2 picks are just like base hits, singles. They wanted to be safe. It's kind of what Golston is. Again, they probably could have gotten this kind of player a little bit later in the draft, later in the 3rd round or in the 4th round. But he's solid. To me, he doesn't really do anything extraordinary or special, but he also doesn't do anything bad either. He does his job. He kind of like what that comment said. He plays inside and out, kind of like what Crawford did. He has some positional versatility. I think he could probably give Dorrance Armstrong a run for his money in training camp. They do want to get cheaper. Not that Armstrong is an expensive player by any means, but they do want to get cheaper. They do want to get younger. And Golston can kind of fill that role. Again, he's not really going to be a sack monster by any stretch of the imagination. But, he does enough there. He does have like 35-inch arms, as you can see on the graphic. He has huge hands, big wingspan. He plays the run really well. I think this was a safe pick. It wasn't anything that's going to, get anybody really, really excited about. But he could be a solid rotational guy for the next few years on his rookie contract. And I think that's what you're going to get with Chauncey Golston.
For what it's worth, Brian Harding joins us, a Washington football team fan, encouraging our YouTube audience to like our video. I certainly appreciate Brian's encouragement and agree with him. Hey, you look at us, breaking bread with division rivals. It's a good thing here. So nice to see that. Connor, your thoughts on this I thought this pick was very particular in that it was the pick the Cowboys acquired from the Micah Parsons trade, because this would go a long way at defining that, right? You got Micah Parsons and whoever, and it wound up being Chauncey Golston. Was it enough for you to feel like, okay, they won, it was worth it? They won anyway because they got their guy at 12 that they would have taken at 10, but was it truly like really sweet? What's your favorite flavor of icing, I guess? Are you a chocolate or vanilla guy?
I'm not a big icing guy at all, actually.
Okay, well then pretend you are. And was this the right kind of icing for you, the Chauncey Golston pick?
No. Again, just because like when I'm drafting defensive ends in the top 100, which is the position he's going to play, I want a dude that can affect the quarterback, that's going to rush the passer. Like you have your DeMarcus Lawrence, you have your Dorrance Armstrongs, which DeMarcus Lawrence is a good pass rusher too, don't get me wrong, but like kind of known for more like his stoutness against the run than anything.
That's what Cody Justice just said. I think with Golston, the Cowboys had run defense on their minds.
Yeah, and like that's great. It's just like that's why you're Marlon Tuipulotus and those type of guys last until the 5th and the 6th round, because they don't impact the game in the way that the value says it needs to. So you can get those guys who aren't good pass rushers later. And Chauncey Golston is much, if this was a guy they had a 3rd or 4th round grade on and they're like, don't want to risk it, great. But that process has to make sense and it has to work, because if you're picking run defenders only in the top 100, like they better be studs. Like they have to be Jadeveon Clowney, a guy who doesn't really do a whole lot as a pressure player, but he is just a force to run against. And it's disappointing, I think, a little bit with Golston, because he's not a player you turn on the Iowa State or the Iowa film and he's just flashing, like jumping off the screen. Like he's a good player, he's a solid player. Like he'll play in the league for 7-8 years as a base defensive end, or a guy who can move inside to 3-tech on passing downs, but he's a guy that 2 years from now people are going to be mad about because he's not getting 6 sacks a game. Like that is just what's going to happen. Is what
Dorrance Armstrong is.
Right. And like I think he could be a better overall player than Dorrance Armstrong, because I think Dorrance Armstrong can be a liability against the run at times.
Don't tell Jerry Jones that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, like he is the type of player that 2 or 3 years from now, fans are going to be like, why did we draft that guy?
Right.
And it's not that he's terrible. Like Dorrance Armstrong isn't terrible. It's just like you expect, and Dorrance Armstrong is a 4th or 5th round guy, so you can understand a little bit more. But when you draft the guy in the top 100 at 84, you expect more of an impact than a solid, consistent, role player. That's what I expect. At top 100, I want a guy who you feel like you can throw on the field. He can start 7, 8, 9 games for a year. Not going to be an issue. Your Cheeto Awuzie, your Jordan Lewis. As much people don't like Jordan Lewis, he still can be a valuable starter for you. So that's my only issue with the pick.
On the subject of Dorrance Armstrong, we're still anxiously awaiting jersey numbers for these rookies. And, I'm sure we're going to have some single digits and some weird numbers. Micah Parsons probably going to wear number 11. Notable fun fact about Dorrance Armstrong. It's a rare thing. He survived the kiss of death that rookie defensive linemen get. He was given 74 and made the roster. Because generally, if you're given 74, you're not making the Cowboys roster, because that's Bob Willie's number. We appreciate Brian's kind comment on our YouTube stream. By the way, John notes his first time watching one of our live broadcasts. John, don't make it the last. Make sure you come on by. We do this all the time. Says, hope to catch more of him in the future. Go Cowboys from the Philippines. But anyway, so quickly, give me a grade. Connor, you go first.
C-.
Goodness. Okay, Cole.
C+.
Golly, guys, we're at the restaurant and they just brought out the breadsticks and you guys said that they were dry and that they were overbaked. Like that's what just happened.
It's not a bad pick. It's just like Connor said, he doesn't do anything that's going to really catch your attention. He's not what you would expect a top 85 pick to be. Not that he's a bad player, but they probably could have gotten him a little bit later in the draft. I think we're not giving him a D or an F. It's just, average. Yeah.
And that's what he'll be. He is going to be, 3 years from now, people will be complaining because he's a 2-sack guy a year. Like he doesn't get sacks, but he's a good, solid run. People complain about DeMarcus Lawrence, and he's one, in my opinion, a top 10, 15 defensive end.
We've all had the please respect DeMarcus Lawrence conversation on Twitter. So, I mean, yeah.
So they're going to love this guy when he's the same style player, just like 3 tiers lower.
So Derek is setting the stage. Now on to the most talked about 99th pick ever. Nahshon Wright. This ended day 2 for the Dallas Cowboys. And my goodness, this one is the hardest one to explain. And the Cowboys, again, if you somehow didn't know, corner out of Oregon State. The most important thing, if you're watching right now, is he is 6'4". That is literally, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way. Apparently his redeeming quality. The Cowboys were all about getting Dan Quinn exactly what he wanted. He wanted, these tall, rangy corners for his secondary, and we'll talk about another one, a safety, if you want to call him that later, that is actually a friend of Blogging the Voices. We'll get to that too. But Cole, we know that this upset a lot of people, but a lot of people have gone back and watched some film, and tried to understand this pick. Do you feel, with a second glance at it, that you kind of maybe can understand what the Cowboys were thinking here, just a little bit?
Not in the top 100, no. Not with Judas on the board, I can't. Honestly, the pick really, I don't really get shocked by many picks. Even late in the draft, you can kind of understand some things here and there. Probably heard of a guy. But I was like flabbergasted when they announced that this was the pick. I mean, you had a feat to our guy sitting right there, friend of the podcast we've had that we all love, that we would have been happy with at 44 in some situation, like some circumstances. Nobody would have complained about that. I thought for sure if they wanted the big corner, he could have been the guy. If they wanted a slot corner or safety, Elijah Molden was sitting right there as well. And just
they went back to back. That's what's going to hurt this pick is people will forever note that they went back to back right after them.
They literally, those were the direct next two picks. If they wanted a linebacker, Jabril Cox is on the board. They had Baron Browning still there. There's a lot of options.
They got Jabril Cox. You can't penalize them for not drafting Jabril Cox.
The thought process behind that, though, is that I think Marcus Mosher tweeted they were choosing between him and they're choosing between Nahshon Wright and Jabril Cox at 99, and they
got their guys.
They got right, but that just blows my mind that they went with that when
that's even a question.
Yeah, one is question, but two that they were so lucky that Cox fell to them in their lap and at 115. Like he easily could have pinned one of those next picks, and Wright, I would have been shocked if anybody else took him in the third round. I mean, I did go back and watch a little bit of him just to get an idea. I knew a little bit of him just from Last Chance U. His brother was one of the stars from there, so I was a little bit familiar with him. Played at Oregon State, started there, but I never in my wildest dreams thought he was going to be a top 100 pick. Obviously he's really tall. He's good in press coverage. From what I saw, I think he has some potential in press coverage, but if he's not in that, he really struggles, especially against shifty wide receivers. Just so happened the Eagles drafted one of the shiftier best route running receivers to come out in recent years in Devontae Smith. So that's probably not good for future matchups, but
the Cowboys have Kelvin Joseph. They're good, man.
True. That is, but I just think there was too much. They left too much value on the board. I see people think, well, just flip flop Cox and Wright, and it's all good. And to an extent, I get that maybe, but you also have to get that. Not only did they pass on Cox and get him, they could have gotten a feet to Malfamu and Cox. They could have gotten Elijah Molden and Jabril Cox. They could have gotten Jabril Cox in the third round and then pick somebody else in the fourth round. I don't know. To me, it blows my mind. If this was a fourth round pick, this was the 115th pick, and they wanted to take a chance on him, or even later in the draft, I could a little bit understand it. But Connor just said, if you're taking a top 100 pick, you're expecting that guy to contribute, if not from day one, at least some point in his rookie season. I don't get that feeling from Wright, and I just think they left too much value on the board. The whole third round, I think that's really the whole theme of the third round. They could have a couple of years they could look back on, hey, that was really solid. That was a really good, third round. You got some decent players from there. But even if that's true, they could have gotten even better players. They could have had an even better draft. And when you had 3 third-round picks, I think we all expected a little bit more.
They think they treated the third round like, you guys ever you get like a gift card for Christmas or something like that to a place, and so you go and you end up spending like a ridiculous amount of money at the place because like, well, I have a gift card, like it's fine, you know what I mean? And so like I'm really not I'm really not paying this much because I have a gift card. It's like, no, you're actually paying the same amount.
You're still using the money
because you could use it on literally anything else. Marsha brings up an interesting point. Maybe he has a rap album. Maybe we're not asking the right questions here. And I will say, look, I am feeling slightly more optimistic right now, just in general. I think that is present in the theme of the show tonight. And I don't know. I think it's because I've had a good day and I'm thinking about getting some Chick-fil-A for dinner. So my spirits are high, but and I understand the literalness of the point, but we're calling it a top 100 pick. It was the 99th overall pick. So like, let's not be so like hard and fast with the top. It was a top 100 pick. It was, but it's not like it was the 82nd, even the 84th overall pick. Like it was, they snuck it in the top 100. But Connor, I understand why you're going to give it like an F right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I didn't know who the player was, and again, like I didn't know who the player was. I didn't watch him. I didn't notice him. You know, I watched other Oregon State defenders who came out this year. Didn't fly off the tape to me. Like, and the two things that I want to say is that one, I hope that he turns into the best corner of all time and can make me look like the biggest idiot in the world. Like I love when that happens. I love when I hate a player. He gets drafted by the Cowboys. I tell everybody I hate the player because I spent the time doing the work and I'm going to give people my opinions. And then 3 years down the road, I go, I suck at this. I am awful at this because that player is really, really good. That makes me so happy. Second thing I'm going to say is if you watch Nahshon Wright after he was drafted by the Cowboys and tell me he was a second or third round player,
nobody's telling you that.
Oh, there's people out there who are saying that. And I'm just like, you can't do that. You can't not watch the player. He gets drafted to your favorite team. Go watch the player and then tell me he's really good. Like that just doesn't fly with me.
So if the Eagles picked him, we'd all be, joking.
Right. You'd be laughing.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Exactly. I mean, let's be honest.
We can't be biased with our assessments. We can't have any sort of, and that's why people will tell me like, oh, then go watch the tape and tell me how you feel about him. And I did go watch the tape, and I'm like, if I were to grade him without any bias, he would have been a 6th, 7th round player for me. And that's just that's where he is. And you drafted him. And you could have drafted him at 138. You could have drafted him in at 178. And I would have been like, that's still a reach by 2 rounds. And that is just my unbiased opinion on how he is an awful athlete. Awful. He has one of the worst relative athletic scores of all time from the cornerback position.
It was like a 2-something, right?
It was a 2.5.
Okay.
Like that is terrible.
Y'all are not wrong, and I'm not trying to say that. But so this is a bit of a homer point, but I think it should be acknowledged that this was clearly a Dan Quinn pick, right? Like this was Dan. What do you want? You can have anything you want. I like that that's happening. I like that there is a level of trust in Dan Quinn to spend a top 100 pick. So like philosophically, from an overall disposition standpoint, I like that. Obviously, we all wish that this had gone a little bit differently. But the good news is that the Cowboys made up for it in the 4th round. They did draft Jabril Cox. Y'all are penalizing them for not doing it with the 99th overall pick. Yes, they got lucky, and that's cool. And that, isn't a skill. But they still got their guy, maybe the most versatile from a coverage standpoint linebacker in the draft. They doubled down on it, gave him the freedom to not pick up Leighton Vander Esch's 5th-year option, as we've talked about. ESPN's Todd Archer wrote today about how the Cowboys are either going to have one of Jalen or him in 2022. And if he's saying that, then it is like a certainty, if you didn't believe the 5th-year option stuff already. And a big part of that is because of this. And again, this is the Cowboys identifying that they made some mistakes and they can't do anything about it, but they are at least trying to rectify them. Cole, Jabril Cox, you got him. 4th round. You happy?
Oh, yeah, I'm really happy with this pick. I think Jabril Cox is a guy that can come in and make an instant impact. As many people know, I went to Mississippi State, worked with their football program. We played LSU the first game of this past season. Jabril Cox had a pick 6 on us in the first quarter, second quarter of that game. And from there, he just had a really big season. Before he got to LSU, he was the star at North Dakota State. He's been a star everywhere he's been. He's arguably the best coverage linebacker in this draft, at least in that conversation. He can play really wherever you need him on that defense. Connor was just talking about Nahshon Wright's athletic score. Jabril Cox had like a 9-point-something out of 10. He's a freak athlete. He can cover running backs, receivers, tight ends, whatever you need him to do. He's not going to play corner or anything, but he's a plus in coverage. He can play the run. He can get after the quarterback. I just think this is a great pick at this point in the draft. As much as we do kill him for Nahshon Wright for a little bit, really the whole 3rd round in general, as far as value goes, you couldn't ask for better value than Jabril Cox. I think that you're looking at him and Micah Parsons being your 2 linebackers in 2022. They're obviously going to be on rookie contracts, and they both complement each other really well. I think that's what kind of helped me, come in a little bit, get warmer to the idea of Micah Parsons being the pick, because everything he either it's an inexperienced student that probably doesn't do really well. Jabril Cox makes up for that, and vice versa. I think they can be a really good. They could. I mean, injury. We don't know how they're going to turn out. We don't know injuries or anything like that. But they could very well turn into what we were hoping LVE and Jalen Smith were going to be after that 2018 season. So I think you have to be excited with that pick.
We've been hoping for a lot of tandems. I mean, we were hoping for Sean Lee and Bruce Carter. We were hoping for Sean Lee and Rolando McClain. This could be, the one. Connor,
I won't guarantee it, but there's potential for it.
Right. Connor, I think we should applaud Cole on not being upset that the Bulldogs, got stunted on by Jabril Cox. But
we won the game. That's all that matters.
But, Connor, easily, and in fact, let's go yes or no if you're watching live with us. Yes or no if you agree with this. The best pick that the Dallas Cowboys made throughout the entire 2021 NFL draft.
Yeah, he's the 44th ranked player on my board. You get him at 115. It's hard to – you can't beat that value. You got him, 60, 70 picks later than I had him graded. So, not a good run defender right now. He's a guy who struggles to kind of take on blocks. His tackling when coming downhill as a run defender isn't very good. Kind of drops his eyes, drops his head, just kind of goes in with the shoulders right now. So don't expect him to come in and just be an absolute missile coming downhill like Micah Parsons is.
Connor, on that point, we've got a question from Abhinav. Hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. I'm rewording the question, but how much do you think he does play this year? You're talking about like he won't come in and be supremely successful right away, but what do you think his utilization is right away?
I think on third downs, you're looking at literally taking Jalen and Leighton off the field and having it Parsons. Like he's your third down backer. He's your nickel. Like he can be your nickel overhang guy. Like if Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis aren't playing well and you need a guy to come in and cover the slot, like he can do that. Like he's a guy that you don't really want him playing corner, but like he can come in and cover slot guys. He can come in and cover tight ends. Like he's your guy that you throw on the field to take away Alvin Kamara. You know what they did with Jordan Lewis. He's a guy you put on the field to take away, Jabril Cox is what people are saying that Nahshon Wright's going to be like. Oh, he's a guy you're going to cover on Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts. That's Jabril Cox's role. Like he's going to come in and man that guy up and give him fits. Just because Nahshon's 6'4", like obviously he's bigger than Jabril Cox. Like Jabril Cox instincts, his technique, his zone coverage drops, like everything about his coverage skills are a lot better. So for me, like obviously the best pick of the draft, in my opinion. The reason I keep talking about the process. The process is broken for them because they say that Jabril Cox was a second-round grade on their board, yet they took probably two of those players in the third round over Jabril Cox. So that's what's frustrating to me. It's great they got Jabril Cox, but say you don't get Jabril Cox. And I know I'm being a negative Nancy, but like say Jabril Cox goes, what has been happening. Trayvon Moore goes right before your pick.
Right.
Patrick Surtain goes right before your pick. Aleem McNeil goes right before your pick. Say that happens to Jabril Cox. You're then looking, this draft kind of changes a lot because you're not excited about Jabril Cox. You're then looking, you pick Nahshon Wright at 99, and then you're getting another player at 115 that you're not like, oh yes, we hit the home run. We hit the ball over the fence. So like that's what's disappointing to me is the process just seems so broken. It didn't last year. Last year, Jerry's on his yacht. The scouts are there. It's like best player available. Boom, we get CeeDee Lamb. Boom, we get Trayvon Diggs. Boom, we get Neville Gallimore. This year, there's a lot of other factors involved with people coming in and taking players that they were probably targeting with their picks, but then they jump tags. They drafted Nahshon Wright over Jabril Cox, who they pretty much admitted had a higher grade. Same thing with Chauncey Golston. So,
do you think the injury concerns may have been a second round?
Yeah, I mean, he could have been a second-round grade on their board for sure. And again, like, we've seen him do it with Jalen Smith too, where, like, they say, oh, he was a top-5 player on our board, but with the injury concerns, he's going to get drafted here, which, again, that goes back to a broken process, in my opinion, because Jalen Smith with a chronic knee injury shouldn't be a top-5 player on your board. Like, you should slot the players where you're going to draft them. Like, you don't slot, Jabril Cox at 30th and then know, hey, we're not going to pick him until the 5th round because of knee. Like that's just broken process in my opinion.
It's like window dressing to an extent.
Right. You're putting like all of that goes into the process. So you have to put that into the process and then slot the players where they're going to get drafted.
Yeah. For sure.
Okay. So right? That's
sure.
it. I mean, there's a lot
he's an A+ for me, right?
Yeah. At that point in the draft, yeah.
Okay, well, finally we have a solid, bounce back moment for the Cowboys here. We had the graphic up incidentally for a moment. Let's keep moving on. Josh Ball, not a lot to say about this pick for obvious reasons. I mean, the off the field, I don't even want to call them questions or concerns, but the what is known about him off the field, there's very little to like, very little to support. And his first conversation with any member of the Dallas media when he appeared on 105.3 The Fan did him no favors. So, the Cowboys invited this situation by drafting him. And we had already been talking about, obviously, after the first two nights, about how the Cowboys were talking about, culture change, whatever, and then drafted Micah Parsons and Kelvin Joseph. This went, way down that direction in a very, very wrong way. And everybody that, on our live show wasn't a fan of it. Everybody here, Anthony says definitely not a fan of that pick. OKG says F. Richard Smith is ball on the field A, off the field F. And I feel like a lot of people feel that way. And it's so hard to even say, oh, did he fall because of the off the fields? Because then you're putting out this idea that evaluators are utilizing that as like, oh, well, we can get him in the fourth round because of this. And this is just, this was no Cowboys fan is pleased about this pick. And I think, he could be a fine tackle for them, but I don't think anybody would really enjoy that much. Do you agree, Cole?
On the field, he's a really talented player. He's a top 100 player coming out of high school. Obviously started his career at Florida State. Dan Booger believes he probably would have been a top 100 pick if there weren't off the field question marks. But the whole reason why he left Florida State and the whole reason why he fell in the draft is because of those off the field question marks, which makes a real concern. It's not anything you can brush over. Like Micah Parsons, Kelvin Joseph have some red flags here and there, but nothing to the extent of what Josh Ball brings to the table. And for me, it's just kind of hard to get excited about this pick. Like you said, it could very well turn into a really good offensive tackle for the Cowboys, something that they really do need with question marks surrounding Tyron Smith and La'el Collins injury-wise. But unless something clears up, which doesn't look like it will, he didn't really answer the questions that he was asked. He's not really handling this well, at least publicly right now. Obviously, we don't know all the answers. We don't know everything. But from what we know, it's really hard to get excited about this from my perspective. Say what you want about the Nahshon Wright pick. But I just think this was a pick that didn't even really need to take either. Forget his off-the-field stuff for a second. There's also better – you can argue, I guess, but there's other quality, comparable offensive linemen still on the board. It's not like he it's like, oh, he's the only starting quality guy that we can get at this point. The only guy that can break the rotation. Who cares about his red flag? No, there's other guys that could have taken, so I think that also kind of makes it worse. I kind of agree with a lot of the comments. It's really hard to back this pick.
Connor, I think Cole has multiple times tonight said Connor said it well. I think Cole said it well there, though. Again, football wise, that's the thing. You can look at the football side of this and say, okay, the Cowboys are addressing, the tackle position. Maybe they believe Josh Ball is a future tackle for them. If they are concerned, maybe they don't believe in Brandon Knight and Terrence Steele, whatever. You can have all those conversations, but it is so difficult to even get to that point because of what Josh Ball brings off the field. And so it calls into question the Cowboys' entire evaluation process that they would draft him knowing what is just known, let alone the facts that are not known at this time.
And Cole touched on it, but I had players graded above him just on the field. Deontay Smith out of East Carolina, I thought was a better player on tape. With the Senior Bowl week, I thought Stone Forsythe out of Florida was a better player on tape. I can't remember if James Hudson made it that far or he went just before that, but he went a lot later than I thought he would. I think at the time I tweeted it, I think I had 3-4 players that play offensive line that offered versatility just based on tape that I liked more than Josh Ball. And again, he's not a bad player on tape. It's just you turn on the tape of him playing UAB, who they had some defenders get drafted this year. You see him overextend. You see him get out over his skates. You see him lunging, and you see him getting beat some. So, I just don't get it, man. Factoring in the tape, he's probably the third or fourth guy there. You're like, okay, we like this guy. For me, he would have been the third or fourth guy just based on tape, and then you account for the off the field. And again, just a flaw. I keep going back to it. The process is flawed, and when you have a flawed process, and then you take players like again. Micah Parsons has off the field. Kelvin Joseph have off the field. Josh Ball, not comparing it. It's just you take 3 or 4 players in one draft when all you talk about leading up to it is culture, leaders. It's just tough for character. It's tough for you to really understand the process that they're putting in place.
Yeah. Tough doesn't describe it. It's impossible. It's impossible for them to validate their pick by any means. This is on them now, though, and something that they have to deal with. We'll move on to the Cowboys' lone 5th-round pick, Simi Fehoko, the talented, at least athletically, wide receiver out of Stanford. I saw there was a clip of him going up against Nahshon Wright floating around Twitter. Little unfair, to Nahshon Wright. Just it's a flea flicker, and this is like a physical god that we're talking about here in terms of Simi. Connor, this was another great value selection by the Cowboys in the 5th round.
Yes. And I talked about it earlier, but I went back and watched Simi Fehoko after he was drafted because he was a guy his body, his style of play has hurt me in the past evaluating guys. I talked about your Kelvin Harmon, which obviously is more athletic than Kelvin Harmon, but your big, tall, 220 plus pound guy, your 6'4" guy, like the JJ Arcega-Whiteside, guys like that who he played at Stanford too, but guys that I like that fit his build and his frame have hurt me in the past. So I feel like I kind of wrongly
You're spooked.
Yeah, right. That's kind of the best way to put it. But I went back and watched his tape and I was like, you know what? I like him better than I did because I actually sit down, I watch it. I see the athleticism translate. So while I did kind of nail people earlier for going back, watching players once they're drafted and liking them more, I did do that with Simi Fehoko. But I just think he's a guy that his athleticism shows up. He's got that big frame, but he doesn't play like a slow, big frame guy. He kind of plays with that athleticism, the vertical speed, the twitch in and out of his breaks a little bit, the ability to throw him the screens and get down the field, burst after the catch. So I like the pick more now than I did on draft day. I didn't hate the pick on draft day either. It was a solid. It wasn't Jabril Cox, but it was your Micah Parsons for me. A guy value fits kind of where he was taken for me. I liked a receiver or two more than him in that selection. But now that I go back and watch it, I can see how his game is going to translate to that offense a lot more than I did before the pick.
Cole, day one, who's higher on the Cowboys depth chart? And you obviously factor in the fact that Simi Fehoko is entering, his rookie year on his rookie contract as a 5th-round pick. But I guess let me rephrase the question. Who has a better chance of making the Cowboys roster, Simi Fehoko or Noah Brown?
Kind of get back and forth on this. I think Noah Brown has the familiarity with the staff. He's been there for years. The front office seems to like him. I think Fehoko as a player is going to give him a real push. I think Cedric Wilson's pretty safe in my opinion. I know there's been some speculation with the Cowboys giving Micah Parsons 11 and all that. What's going to happen there? Wilson had a great game against Seattle. He showed some things throughout the season, especially when Dak was in there. But Noah Brown, I think, is in real jeopardy. He's kind of, he doesn't have he's nowhere near the athlete that Fehoko is. And Fehoko is a guy that he's going to be cheap, 5th-round pick. I know Noah Brown's a 7th-round pick, but still. But he brings more to the table. I think they both can contribute on special teams. He brings more to the offense if they want to give him snaps at wide receiver. He can stretch the field. He's an all Pac-12 wide receiver, went over 500 yards twice. Stanford had multiple quarterbacks playing his junior year with KJ Costello and David Mills, and he's produced with both of them. I think this is a really good pick. I agree with Connor. They got great value here as well. Another blue chip prospect that they got out of high school. It seemed to be a theme with a lot of their picks. I think he can translate well to the NFL. But yeah, I definitely think Noah Brown's job is in jeopardy.
Connor, Jay Airwood, I guess asking that question, but if you had to answer right now, yes or no, Connor, So this is Jay's question. So does Fehoko get the 5 wide receiver spot and become a core special teamer? Obviously, top 4 are Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and then I think we'll all put Cedric Wilson in there. So is Simi number 5? I feel like he's got the best chance to earn it. I think that's what Cole just said.
Yeah, I think so too. It goes back, like we saw Noah Brown with Mike McCarthy, Kellen Moore. We know Kellen Moore's been around with Noah Brown. So can he buy the coaching staff? That's going to come down to it.
It's like biggest obstacle.
It's truly going to come down to the coaches. Like, who do they fall in love? Because 6, your 5th or 6th wide receiver. If they keep 6, I think both of them are safe, which they kept 6 last year. So I think if they keep 6, both the guys are safe. Totally fine. If they only go with 5, that's going to come down who can do special teams. We see Noah Brown, really good special teams player, does a lot of things on special teams. And again, like, it's tough to see them cutting a 5th round pick just like that. But I think Fajoko's traits offer something that the rest of these guys on the receiving depth chart don't have. So I would keep Fehoko over Brown.
You bring up an interesting point, Connor, in that, they're so hesitant to part with draft picks. Jeff brings up a point that says if Brown wins out, we are picking vets for no reason again. We need to have open competitions, right? And while I know we all agree that open competition is the best thing, I also think it would be irresponsible, and I know this isn't Jeff's point, but to say we're going to keep Simi Fehoko just because we spent the 5th round pick on him, right? Like, we'd rather devote ourselves to that resource versus Noah Brown, who will probably move on from next year anyway or whatever. Keep the best player. Richard is kind of in lockstep with you guys. I think both make it because of special teams. So we'll see here. But give me a grade here, Cole. Simi Fehoko.
B+.
You guys are all B pluses. I mean, Connor, nodding your head, B+.
Yep, B+.
All right, that was boring. Let's move on. And you can't say B+ here. Quinton Bohanna, the Cowboys' 6th round pick, their first 6th round pick. We'll get to the other one in a moment. You guys wanted a run stuffer, a trash can. You wanted a nose tackle. You got him, Connor. We
did. We finally got a big guy that's not sub 300 pounds or sub 6 foot playing that nose tackle role. That's what he does. He's going to eat up space. Needs to play with better pad level, because we see big guys all the time who don't make it because they fire high out of their stance, their chest. They give their chest away. They don't play with leverage. So if he can play with that squatty frame, he's a bigger nose tackle. A lot of times you want your nose tackles to be 6'1". You want them to be your Vita Veas, 6'2",
right.
350 pounds, because you play with that low center of gravity. You play with natural leverage. So he's a taller dude. He's going to have to play with that low center of gravity. He's going to have to keep his pad level low. He's going to have to be able to lock out his arms, and he has length. So that's going to be the biggest thing for me, is if he can play squatty, if he can play low to the ground, he can play with a strong anchor and strong base. He could be a starter at nose tackle. It's just playing. He needs to play at 6'1", not 6'5", and that's something he struggled with at Kentucky at times, is firing high out of his stance, raising his pads, and then guys are able to get into his chest and control him a little bit. But if he can play low, he can play with a low center of gravity, play with good leverage, I think he's got a chance to really stick around for a few years.
Cole, a couple of comments here. Justin says, Quinton Bohanna is actually one of my favorite picks. It's not sexy by any means, but we really needed that space-eating, double-team taking, run-blocking 1T. That's a heavy phrase to try to say 7 times in a row. We've been sorely missing that. A all day. Derek says, I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. Not a UK fan. Wow, how'd that happen? But love that we got this big guy. Needs to learn to get low, to your point, Connor, but could help keep our linebackers clean. It's a B for big, in my opinion. You can't give it a B+, Cole, but you can give it a B if you want to.
Yeah, I really like this pick. This is a guy that started games at nose tackle at Kentucky from his freshman year on, which is pretty hard to do in a Mark Stoops defense. As I mentioned earlier, he seems to always turn out NFL defenders, and he's a guy that can step right in. I don't think he's going to be an instant impact guy, but I do think he has a legitimate shot to make this roster, because he's a guy who clogs up lanes, is a run stuffer. He's not going to put up any impressive stats or anything like that. He's not going to get very many sacks, if any. He's not going to get a ton of tackles. I think he had like 40 or 50 tackles for his entire career, which is kind of insane. But he was an All-SEC performer at Kentucky. He earned some All-SEC honors from Pro Football Focus last year. So I mentioned he started from his freshman year on. I really like this pick at this value late in the draft. we all wanted that one tech, and I think Bohanna definitely has that potential. It seems to me that after they took Parsons, they really invested a lot of resources into improving if you go by their picks and what their board was and how they value players, they really invest a lot of resources into that defensive line to hopefully help and protect their two linebacker picks. And with Bohanna, with Osa, with Chauncey, with all these guys, I really think Bohanna has a chance to make this roster and grow into a guy that is the one tech that we've been waiting for. He's not going to be a superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but I do for sure think he has a role on his team.
Connor, quick question for you. Justin asks, do you think Brent Urban and Bohanna split time?
I think you want him to split time with somebody, whether that's Antoine Woods. I really don't know if we're going to see Brent Urban play a ton of nose tackle. I think he might be a guy who moves all around. Like, he's going to play some defensive ends, some three techniques, one technique. Like,
maybe that's the Tyrone Crawford replacement.
I think that's Chauncey Golston, but I think, it kind of a similar
spirit.
Right.
In spirit.
But, like, I don't even like. Maybe not Tyrone Crawford, but he's like your absolute chess piece. Like, he's your
what they wanted Tyrone Crawford to be.
Right. Like, he's your guy who's going to play he's not going to play right defensive end because he just doesn't really offer anything. But, like, he's your guy that when they go, 3-4 base, like, he could play your nose tackle there. He could play your 5 tech there. He could play your nose tackle, and you can play your 1 technique. You can play your 3 technique. You can play your left defensive end. Like, he can move all around for you because he's got length, he's got power. Like, he can just do so many different things for you. So I don't know if he'll be your, like, starting nose tackle when you go 4-3, when you play your even front, your 4-man defensive line. Like, I don't think he's your starting 1 tech, but I think he's, Brent Urban's a guy who can do so many different things for you. I think he'll make this team because of that. He can be a good run defender. But I think Quentin Bohanna is a guy that you want to play 30% of the snaps on early downs, on first and second downs, or you want him on the field when teams are winning late in the game because he can eat up space. You just don't want him really playing 60, 70. You don't want him to be your Neville Gallimore this year where he's taken over as your starting defensive tackle. Like, you don't want that because he just doesn't have the stamina. He doesn't have the pad level right now to just be on the field consistently. But as a late in the game run stuffer or a first down, second down player, short down, goal line guy, like, that's when you want him in the game, playing 30, 40% of the snaps, but having Antoine Woods, Brent Urban playing higher percentage of the snaps, but mixing in a lot of that time.
I guess it is technically a draft related question. Before we move on within the draft, an interesting question from David Medina says, after the draft, what free agent acquisition has the least job security? I will say Terrell Basham, just because I think he was already on the outset. And there's already, like a lot of ends to carry. And I think that they're far more attached to anybody else than they are him. And so that's my answer. Connor, yours.
That would be Carlos Watkins pretty easily.
Same point. Although Dan Quinn did mention,
I know they talked about him.
By name.
They did. Then they drafted. It's just like, he's another guy that is just like, he's not a nose tackle. Like, he's kind of a backfield 3 technique. And it's like, how many of those guys are you going to keep? Like, somebody's either going to get asked to gain 20 pounds and play nose tackle, or 10, 20 pounds and play nose tackle, or you're cutting Devon Hamilton. So that would be mine, as Devon Hamilton. I think Terrell Basham could carve out a nice little, if they give him the opportunity, carve out a nice little role playing with, splitting time with Randy Gregory and doing things like that. So I hope they stick with Terrell Basham is what I'm saying.
Oh, in the interest of mixing it up, and I know that the answer is who's most likely, but in the interest of giving us a third name, who is maybe a sneaky guy that is, a free agent acquisition, it's up to you. Who do you got?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking Cole. Sorry, I'm asking Cole.
I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but with this contract and injury, you can make an argument with KZ, just because they're not paying him very much money. He's coming off an Achilles injury.
Who's playing free safety?
That's why I don't see it. But like, if you want to,
they're gonna bring Jeff Heath back and use him wherever they need to. All right.
If you bring Jeff Heath, if you bring a safety in August, I could see it happening. If you want a third name, but I think Carlos Watkins is definitely the guy that's gonna be the odd man out.
Okay, that's a good question. Appreciate to David Medina for it. So next up, Israel Mukuamu. For anybody that's watching, we sat down with Israel the day after he was drafted. We talked to him on Sunday. It's a great interview. It is on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. Just go back and check it out. Really fun interview. Really great guy. Really easy to root for. Connor, really tall. Corner, obviously in college at South Carolina. Maybe this was the Cowboys' way of getting J.C. Horn, just getting as close as they possibly could. Potentially a safety within the Cowboys. But this, I mean, this is a 6th-round pick. I mean, this is throwing darts, and this is a nice one to throw.
I really liked Israel Mukuamu. I still can't pronounce his last name.
Mukuamu.
I always added an extra A, I guess, in there, Mukuamu. But Mukuamu, I liked him a lot. I think he showed up a lot on South Carolina's tape. Kind of what I said Nahshon Wright didn't do when I was watching Oregon. Like, people always say, like, oh, if you flip Jabril Cox and Nahshon Wright, like, it makes the draft look better. And they're right. But, like, what I would do is switch them and then have, Israel Mukuamu switch. Like, I'd switch this bad boy all around. Because he just missed my top 100. Like, he's like my 115th overall player. The versatility he offers. He played safety and corner at South Carolina. I think he's a corner. I think that's the way his game translates. He's a much better athlete than Nahshon. So I like Mukuamu a lot. I think he's a guy who should get an opportunity to make this team, should get an opportunity to play corner. They probably won't do that because they drafted right and they have guys like Reggie Robertson who they could move back to safety. But I wish I trusted them to give Mukuamu and Wright the same shake. And I think Mukuamu would win it. That's just my opinion, but they'll probably have him starting off at safety, and we'll go through that whole position flex ordeal again.
Cole, Justin P, obviously we're talking about Israel Mukuamu, says that's who's playing safety if KZ goes down, either him or Connor. You and I broke down the undrafted free agency class, Tyler Coyle. Do you see that? I guess if KZ were to go down, is this, I mean, I'm not saying you'd feel great about it, but like, is this at all?
I feel great.
I mean,
I would think that maybe moving Keanu Neal back to safety would be way up the list, and having a 6th-round rookie start at safety.
Sure.
Even Connor just said probably it's a better fit at corner, at least initially, right out the gate. So I don't really see that, but I do like Israel a lot. He really broke out on the college football scene when he had 3 interceptions on Jake Fromm in the same game when South Carolina knocked
Smith's
off.
point here. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, Georgia, a top 5 team in the country, looked like they were on their way to a college football playoff. South Carolina, I think, had their 3rd-string quarterback and won the game, mainly because of Israel's performance. He's the guy that stood out in that game, 3 interceptions, had a pick 6. So that's really what I most remember about him. It caught my eye. He's huge. Like Connor said, I mean, just with Nahshon Wright, you took him early, kind of same build, or at least mold, big corner, a lot of size, lengthy, but he's a better player, at least right now. But yeah, I don't think he would be your starting safety if KZ goes down or anything like that. I think you're in a world of trouble if that were to happen.
I agree. We had a comment. My Cowboys family says, how about moving Jordan Lewis? I mean, that's, an interesting emergency smash glass, option. But this was a nice pick by the Cowboys overall. Give me a grade, Connor, for Israel Mukuamu. You said your 115th overall player, so to get him that late, it has to be an A.
A.
Cool.
Yeah. A.
They better give him a fair shake. That's all I'm saying. Give the guy a chance.
I would personally give Bohannon an A as well at that value. I really like Bohannon, so that would be my
you guys. Look at you guys, just feeling all sunshine and rainbows all of a sudden.
You got tired of the bees, so we got to.
Last Cowboys pick to talk about, Matt Farniok. This feels like the least likely candidate to make the roster. Just all things considered. There were a lot of safety options, especially ones that hit UDFA that we were all chirping for the Cowboys to take, but no, they didn't take a guard. Trey Smith was somebody who a lot of people liked as well, but obviously got sniped. I guess you could call it getting sniped there, but Connor, they have a new guard. And honestly, guard is a sneaky, scary future question mark for them. With Connor Williams in the contract year, Connor McGovern's still not really showing anything. And that's assuming Tyler Biadasz is the center of the future. I mean, I think we all think that that's certainly possible, but there's a lot to learn in his second season. And so that position could be really, really, really needing a makeover a year from now.
Yeah, I actually graded him as a tackle, so so that's where I'm at with him. I think he can play guard. I think he has some center versatility too. He's got the length to play at tackle. He's got that athleticism to play at tackle. That's kind of why I viewed him as a tackle. I know he played some there at Nebraska, so he's kind of that versatile offensive lineman that can play multiple positions for you. Can fill in. Just they have so many depth. Like he's gonna have to beat out Terrence Steele, Brandon Knight. He's gonna have to beat out. It's hard to see him making the roster. So this is probably your practice squad guy that you hope can sneak through and stick around for a year or two and maybe take over for a Brandon Knight or fill in for a Connor McGovern or a Connor Williams when he's gone next year.
Cole, Jeff asks, do the Cowboys have to re-sign Joe Looney? I mean, I don't know that this pick isn't why, but I guess this pick is exemplary of why you didn't really walk away with many more options. Do you think it's pressing for the Cowboys to bring back Joe Looney?
I mean, I guess it's worth considering just because of the question marks. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. But, yeah, I mean, I guess that was a really big argument on why you would take Rashawn Slater in round one.
Right.
He's a guy that offers positional versatility, can start right in at guard. So that kind of hurts there. And they didn't address it till late in the draft with their last pick. And he did play a lot of tackle at Nebraska, played some guard. He's 6'6", so he's kind of in that, tackle mold. I think this is more of just, we want to lock him up, don't want to have to outbid other teams for him and go from there. Maybe he does turn into something. But, yeah, like you said, RJ, he's probably the least likely pick to have any chance to actually make the 53-man roster.
Agreed. Jonathan Tucker wants us to always remember Ben DiNucci. Lots of comments. Also added, don't sleep on and don't forget about Ben DiNucci. The Cowboys did not draft a quarterback for what it's worth, so Ben DiNucci's job's at least safe for another year.
Jonathan Tucker must be real bored tonight.
I mean, or just a big, James Madison fan. I mean, it could be one or the other. Okay, let's one last time. Cole, you go first since you're more optimistic innately. An overall draft grade for the Cowboys and their 11 players.
Overall?
Yeah, grade in the class.
C+. Okay. Not bad drafts, but they could have gotten a ton of more value, specifically in round 3. Jabril Cox saved it for me any worse. Simi has some potential as well. I just think missing out on the top 2 corners, taking a linebacker over Rashawn Slater, and reaching on the Oregon State corner as well, Nahshon Wright. I think it's a C+. It's not horrible, but it's nowhere near their best either.
You said Jabril Cox saved day 3. Did he save the draft? I mean, I think he kind of did. If you remove Jabril Cox from that list of names and it's just the 10 other guys, I think it's horrible. It's not. You have the good first 2 picks. You hope to have some contributors throughout the rest of the draft, but I mean, you have nothing to hang your hat on. At least with Jabril Cox, you have a potential starter down the road. Probably arguably the best value in the entire draft from any team. 4th round, probably top 50 player. So yeah, I think you definitely saved the draft. Okay, so C+ ish for Cole. Connor, overall grade.
As bad as this sounds, I'm taking Nahshon Wright completely out of the draft and giving it a B-. Because if you add in his draft grade to it, it's tanking it. If you just take him out, we're looking good.
It's like when like finals week and a teacher takes away your worst grade. You have a drop grade. That's pretty much what it is.
Yep, that is exactly what I'm doing. Because you take him out of the equation, most of it's a B+. You got a couple C minuses, so you're equaling out to a B-. But you add in that big old F right in the middle, and you're like, ugh.
So Kevin actually asked, how do you guys give all the picks B's and then an A and then the overall grade is C+? How I just did.
It's based on value as well and what they left on the board. If them reaching, it's a factor of things. Again, C+, B- is not the worst draft ever, but this could have been a lot better if you go back and look at who was on the board when they took some certain players and et cetera.
I think it also is impacted by last year's draft in that the Cowboys were the belle of the ball. It was pure value. That's all last year's draft was. And so it's a completely different,
It's kind of the opposite this year for a lot of their pick, other than Cox and maybe Joseph.
if they draft Fatu Melifonwu or Elijah Molden, where they drafted Nahshon Wright, it's a A. You know, you're like, man, we got a starting linebacker, we got another starting DB, we got a great depth piece at linebacker, we got probably a starting interior guy, we got a starting corner. Like you're like, dude, we crushed it. But that 99th overall pick just crushes this draft class.
He might turn out to be like an all-pro.
And again, I hope in 2 years I'm like, I am never grading a draft again because that dude is a stud.
So this is the last thing, and I didn't prep either of you for this, and obviously didn't prep any of our live audience for this, but I wanted to bring this up. I wrote about this, and the article will come out on Wednesday at bloggingtheboys.com. One of the shows I do on the Blogging the Boys podcast network is with Brandon Lee Gouton, who runs our Eagle site at SB Nation. And we were grading the entire NFC East. That episode will be out on Wednesday as well. But I'm going to put the whole first round up here because I want to kind of explore a hypothetical with you guys. We talk so much about the merits of tanking, right? Like teams should tank. Many people wanted to see the Cowboys tank, whatever. And we were kind of talking about what if Washington had tanked? What if Washington hadn't won the NFC East? Because and to kind of refresh everybody, entering week 17, remember the winner of the Cowboys-Giants game, which New York won, would have won the NFC East if Philadelphia had beaten Washington later that night in the game that the Eagles threw. You all remember this, obviously. So what if Philadelphia had won that game, right? Like you can play this game a number of ways, like maybe Doug Peterson isn't fired, whatever, blah, blah. But if Philadelphia wins that game, Washington is the team sitting at 11, where New York was before they traded out with Chicago, and New York is the team sitting at 19. And so Washington is in that exact same spot where Justin Fields goes. Washington didn't walk away with any quarterbacks in this draft. And so is Washington the team that ultimately takes Justin Fields? Obviously, New York doesn't end up with the trade back with the Bears, which picks up a future first rounder. Maybe then if Washington is sitting at 11, Chicago is terrified that they're going to take Justin Fields. So maybe they call the Cowboys at 10 and give them the offer that they gave the Giants. I mean, like, it's nuts how you can kind of peel back the what ifs because of that one game. I mean, and so as Jeff notes, Washington has Justin Fields if they tank. So happy they don't. Like, it really did work out so well for the Cowboys and the NFC East as a whole that Washington won the division is my overall point. And now we can prove that with the way the draft fell.
Yeah, if they add a quarterback of Justin Fields' caliber to that defense, you got Terry McLaurin, you got Curtis Samuel, it would have been hard to pick against them, at least in the preseason, to be the favorite to win the division. That's how important a quarterback is. You're not really too scared about them with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but it is pretty crazy to see just one game, one pick, and like have a domino effect.
Yeah, Connor, would you have liked that if Washington had lost that game and then Dallas had gotten the Chicago offer to move back? Because the other thing is, like, if Dallas moves back from 10 to 20, and we'll put this back up here one more time, they're not landing Micah Parsons at 20. So maybe they take Greg Newsome at 20. And the whole draft for the Cowboys is completely different. Maybe they still land Jabril Cox, whatever, blah, blah. But, like, it's all because of that one game that Washington beat Philadelphia in when Doug Peterson threw it.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. It's the way you broke it down was perfect in my opinion. You know,
Thank you.
The way that one game, you know, if the Cowboys don't beat San Francisco earlier in the year, if they lose that last game of the year, you know, it's just like they're picking 6. They're picking, you know, they're getting Surtain. So it just changes everything. It's crazy how one game can make that much of a difference, but you crushed it. And again, like Washington, Landon Fields, just absolutely you kind of just you hurt because your probably best team in the division now has a quarterback that has a great potential in the league, and that changes the entire dynamic of the next few years. It changes the entire dynamic of what you're trying to accomplish over these next few years. So it's brutal.
This was fun, guys. You can check out Cole Patterson at A to Z Sports Dallas, and you can hear him obviously on Wednesdays on Talkin the Draft with Connor Livesay, who you can read at bloggingtheboys.com. They are normally joined by Dalton Miller, who is literally in Aruba and therefore didn't want to take the time to. They have Wi-Fi in Aruba. Like, I don't know why, you know, Dalton is excused all of a sudden for not joining us here. But we appreciate everybody for hanging out. This conversation will also be available on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. You can subscribe there on Apple devices or on Spotify. Also subscribe to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. We've been doing a lot of live streams and we don't have any plans on stopping. We have a Jabril Cox film review coming out very soon. The Micah Parsons film review is already out if you want to go check that out. So yeah, Connor, Cole, any last words before we fully leave? No last words. You guys are good.
I think we summed it all up.
I am so glad that this is over.
Okay.
Hopefully Nahshon Wright turns into an all-pro.
Not the live
that's my last
podcast,
words.
but I'm so glad we could just put down the tape for a while. We don't have to write any more draft profiles. It's just we're getting ready for training camp. We're getting ready for the real deal now.
All right. Well, appreciate everybody for hanging out. And Cole's right. Hopefully Nahshon Wright is like, hopefully we're watching this a year from now. And we're like, we are stupid. So appreciate everybody for joining us. Y'all have a good night. We'll see you next time.